In theory, it is streaming. Let's see, is it going to stream? Restream has it. YouTube has it. Hello, everybody. Oh, hold on. The Gonna Geek site is off. Why is it off? I bet that I put the wrong date. I'll bet because I know I fixed the post. But what do you want to bet? I put the wrong date. No, wait, what? Weird. I don't know why it didn't go. Oh, I did the wrong expiration, that's why. Yep, I expired it like right now.
I've done that a few times.
All right, there we go. Should be live now. All right. Can everybody hear us? Okay, cool. AV is okay, and that's the only thing that's going to be okay.
What about the HDMI? Is that okay?
I don't know about the HDMI, but
S-Video?
Oh man, I missed the S-Video connection. That was a beast of a connection until you bent all your pins because you put it in an upside down. That was short-lived. All right. We didn't practice this opening, did we?
When have we?
A lot, actually. A lot.
I don't know if SJ is okay because I can't see him, Damien.
Oh, you can't see me?
No.
Oh, well, that's funny. There you go. How about now? My bad. I forgot to push the virtual camera button on OBS. Everybody else was seeing us.
Okay.
And finally, this week's Better Pod back. We have some final listener feedback about our media host season. All right. He doesn't sound okay. Is SJ okay? I am never okay. My whole podcast endeavor is just been a front to try to mask the horrible feeling that I have within myself.
Maybe you need more fiber.
That's a horrible feeling for sure. All right, I think we're good. I assume that was sarcasm or a comment about me actually sounding okay. I assume the audio is fine.
Johnny hasn't said something, and he would have said something by now.
Johnny,
AV is okay.
Oh, that's right. That would be I would be part of the A and the V. I'd be half of it.
I just think that nobody answered me about the HDMI.
I know. Let's just do this.
Okay.
Chris from Play Comics, a show where we look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that comic book source material. A part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and the opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other wonderfully geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Welcome to episode 303 of Better Podcasting. On this show, we complete our season 4 podcast media host reviews with our final thoughts.
But first, in this week's Better Ponderings, topics include an update on selling gear and what we plan to do during the off season.
And finally, in this week's Better Podback, we have some final audience feedback for our media host season.
Lauren, start the season finale now.
This is Better Podcasting. We are hobby podcasters through and through, just like you. That's why we are different. We minimize the money talk so that you can focus on building a better podcast.
Welcome to the third episode of the 300 series of Better Podcasting. I am Steven, and I am pleased to say SP is here this week.
I am here. Finally, we get to do our season finale. It has been a long time coming, and now 2 months overdue.
Absolutely. So if you didn't catch that, that's what's happening. This is the season finale, which means that we will be away for a titch after today's episode. Pause here. I don't know why all of a sudden your frame is hold on. I gotta remember I said for a titch. I
didn't do anything. I didn't change anything.
I think so. Thank you. You're the greatest. I appreciate that. I'm just gonna make a quick tweak. Oh, gotta go the other way. This is the thing that I miss about XSplit, though. It was easier to adjust things on another scene. We write edit point down. Start my edit point browser window. Scroll all the way down. 9 edit. Tweet. What did I say? I said something about the season.
Titch.
Oh. Yeah, after Titch. Dude, they are nested scenes. Okay, I'll go back here. They are nested scenes, but what happens is because like SP is on a full frame, he's on the full frame on the other one, and I have to adjust that one. And in XSplit, I could right click on that other scene and pop it open and work on it while actually projecting or broadcasting another scene. And so I could go and I could take that nested scene, and I don't think you can do that in OBS unless I've missed that, because I'd like to be going and editing another scene that I'm on right now, which is the one that is nested. So, yeah. Anyways, so what's going to happen here is we'll have a break, and then we'll come back in September, a couple of weeks into September, because there's a lot that happens at the beginning of September, and so we're just going to put that out there. It'll be a couple of weeks into September, but it will be a bit of an abbreviated season. Now, we've made it no secret. From the beginning of the season, we found last year taking an extended period around Christmas was quite helpful. Yes, we had some personal things going on in that time, but just the general extended period around the holiday season, and we said we wanted to do that again this year. So that's what's going to happen, is a good portion of November and December this coming year, we will not be doing this show, which means that when we come back in September, it will be for an abbreviated season. And let's be real here, this season here that we're wrapping up today went longer than we wanted to. So that's why we're taking August to ourselves, because, hey, we have things we want to do in the summer, which is not podcasting.
Yeah, like home maintenance and yard work and, vacations, which I haven't had many of those. So, yeah, it'd be nice to take one. I don't think I'm going to get one in this year. Anyway, yes, we need that, as well as, Steven, I don't know if you want to talk about it right now or later, but the burnout factor after a whole, 7 months into this is definitely high.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This went on longer than we wanted to. We have made a habit since our return from the hiatus to stagger some things out and add some extra breaks in there, and even alternate shows so that we could do that. But we just kept on keeping on for this, aside from a few weeks here and there. But we just kept on keeping on to get through these media hosts for you, the listener, and for ourselves. And of course, we'll come back to that in a minute. But just know this, that we will be back in September after this episode. We'll give you an exact date and time. TBD, watch the socials, watch the Discord, watch all of that, but it will be a couple of weeks into September, and you might see, because we're not going to be doing an exhaustive review again. You will see more of Better Podcasting of the past when we come on back, but it won't look exactly like the past format, because we do want to take a little bit of the things that we like from this season and work them into our future seasons, which includes talking a little more podcast current events. We've liked having that in this. Before this season, a lot of times we were just talking on this show here, we were just talking one, maybe two pieces of podcast current events, but overall it was very focused, and we like talking multiple pieces, especially when there's busy podcast industry news. That happens sometimes where it's a batch of things, and we like to be able to talk about several different things. So you can expect to see a little bit more of that in the future. And also just keep in mind that we like to have our time to ourselves, and sometimes trying to plan out exhaustive discussions on a single topic, it can be a lot sometimes.
Yeah, fortunately, this was formulaic, and the season lended itself to a little bit less arduous preparation, except for the fact that we both had to spend numerous hours prepping for the show. But also, as we look to the future, we might in the future, maybe not next season, review more products. It just won't be next season. And then the industry news that Stephen is talking about, that's our take on the hobby podcaster implications of the industry news. And you don't get that anywhere else. That is only here on Better Podcasting. Nobody else talks about that. They may talk about independent podcasters, they may talk about small company podcasters, but nobody's talking about the hobby podcaster. That's why you come here to Better Podcasting.
And if you're one of those people who think that the word hobby podcaster is taboo, I don't want to hear your take on it. There you go. Should we do the Better Podnerings?
Yes, let's go ahead and do that.
All right, let's start off with a personal update, and this is coming out of the world of SP, because we haven't actually this season had a lot of chatter about something that was going on for a long time before this season, which is selling of podcast gear. I know you've been selling things quite a bit, and I can't believe that you managed to find somebody to buy your Rodecaster Pro 2.
Yeah, and pay more than I paid for it too. That's just been no. I'm actually using the Rodecaster Pro 2, and it's going to stay in the studio until the next generation of gear comes out and I find an acceptable replacement. No, right now I have sold a Zoom H6. I've sold a couple of the Mackie Pro FX 16 V2 mixers I've had, sold the compressor I had, sold the Cherry audio racks that I had from Audio Racks, spelled R-A-X. Still a big believer in their products. I just didn't have need for it anymore. And honestly, when I was doing my upgrade to my studio last year, I didn't have time to go to them and have them build me a tiered audio solution on top of my desk. Otherwise, I would have. So Audio Racks, it's all one word, R-A-X. Big believer in their products, but I couldn't use the 4U audio rack anymore, so I sent that off along its way. I think we talked about it. It found its home in a historic studio recording environment down in Cincinnati. And then the latest sale just blows my mind. I think you have one of these too. It's the Lynx Pro HH-MX10 microphone.
I do. And it's still sitting in a tub of other microphones in my garage.
So I listed it, and I thought I was listing it for cheap because it was one of the cheaper microphones. Think of it in terms of a Behringer XM1800S class of microphone. So it's not all that expensive, maybe an 8500 Behringer 8500 microphone. So it's a $20 microphone, and I didn't look up what it would cost or anything. And I just put $20 on it, and it sold for $20, and you could get one brand new for $19.99. So I made a penny on that sale.
Well, that's awesome. And well, maybe you save somebody some wait time, or maybe you save somebody a trip to a store or somewhere. Like you don't know. It might have been worth their time. Plus, no taxes, I assume, from you, unless you're selling so much stuff that now you actually have to be a registered business.
Yeah, no, I have avoided using eBay, although I think I'm going to have to go on eBay for a couple of the unique items or the items that just aren't going to sell locally. So I remember I sold my 3-pack in a garage sale. I sold my 3-pack XM 1800S for $5, and I was fine with that because those microphones, in my opinion, are not very good, especially with all the microphones that I have. So just, pass them along to somebody else that wants to use them for whatever reason. That's what happened. I do have some microphones for sale right now. We'll see how they go. And then I have a whole bunch of other stuff to sell off too. Another recent sale that I had was a older Nighthawk Wi-Fi system. It was I want to say it was an X8 if I remember correctly. So it was tri-band, it was still serviceable, still good condition. It worked, and I sold that for a little underpriced. I sold it for $50. I think I could have got a little bit more out of it, but I just wanted it out of the house. So I'm in that mode of just stuff, get rid of it. If I have to get rid of it for free or throw it away, that's fine. I just want it out of the house.
I need to start making an active effort to try to sell like you are, because I got so much stuff to sell. And kudos to you, especially selling some of this stuff locally. That's insane.
Yeah, my advice to anybody that has a lot of stuff that they've accumulated over time in their podcasting career that wants to get rid of it, and you're scheduled pretty tightly, like Stephen and I are, where having a specific night or weekend to do any of this is few and far to come by. I have taken the onus to take one weeknight and then list at least one thing in that weeknight. This includes setting it up for pictures. It includes research into what the going market value of a used item of the same ilk is going to be. It includes actually listing it in one or multiple online areas. And I found a new one or two that have had spotted results as well. Facebook Marketplace is up there. Craigslist is up there. But there's a couple more. I want to have a couple more opportunities to sell gear there before I talk about it in the future. But if our audience uses something that is not eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or Craigslist, please let me know. And I would enjoy trying it out, because I do have various different items that might work better in different areas. And from that, I could say, if you are on something like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, there is room for deals right now, because people in this market are moving for whatever reason. Their parents are passing on. This stuff that happens all the time. But if you're looking for really good wood antique furniture, like, that is going for pennies on the dollar right now. And the same is true of a bunch of different items. Audio gear is no exception. I mean, there is a certain floor for certain items that you're not going to be able to go below. But you can get something like, I saw a TV. I bought a TV from Best Buy for a rehab bedroom, and it was a really good TV, 55-inch, really good TV. It was right around $1,000, right? So yeah, I actually put some chunk of change into it. Well, then I get on these sites and I'm like, okay, well, what could I have had? And I take a look at them, and they are really low prices sometimes. Now, I wonder if there's like dead pixels in there, or inputs or outputs that don't work, or, everything
It only
like that.
shows the McDonald's menu board on repeat.
Something like that, right? So yeah, there are different ways to go about it. And yeah, I just have to address this because Damien threw it in the chat. No Facebook SP has been using Facebook Marketplace. Yes, I have. I'll admit it. I went back to Facebook specifically to utilize Facebook Marketplace, and that was on the advice of several people at work that said, oh yeah, Facebook Marketplace is where it's at. Okay, well, I'll do that. So there is no tax form that you have to fill out from Facebook, although I wonder if that will occur at some point in time if you sell stuff through Facebook Marketplace. They can't prove that you made the deal with somebody at a certain level, especially if you meet them in person. So I don't know how they're going to do all of that in the future. I can just see the government saying, yeah, we want our cut of all that market that's out there. Anyway, that was a lot longer than I wanted to go, but selling audio gear, used audio gear, if you have been in podcasting for a while, there is a market out there. And if you are a new podcaster that don't mind having the latest and greatest, and you can get by with some of the older gear, you can find it online in different spots. I'm not a huge eBay fan, but maybe you are. So just your mileage may vary, and buyer be warned.
Before we go to the next point, I just want to have a confession here, and I think we'll have to ask, because if you didn't know this, we stream this live when we do stream, and usually it's on Wednesdays, but anyways, we're not today. But I'll need Johnny Pennington to come to our chat and do a wellness check after I put this in here, because I have to admit to you, I have been thinking that it might be time for me to sell the BP40, because I am currently on the SM7B, have been for what, a year and a half now, something like that. And then I like the Rode Procaster. And then I've got like the pod mic, which is fine. I'm not sure where the BP40 fits in. Like, you know, if I'm wanting a more upper end sound, I'd go with that. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I feel like
we have a meetup at your place with several of us, right?
Yeah.
And we all want the higher quality microphones. The BP40 would be one, right? You said you had the Rode Procaster, so that's one.
Yeah.
And the Shure, and then, so that's just two.
But I have an RE320 that I probably won't sell, even though I should, because it's not good for my voice, but...
Yeah, I'd be fine selling that.
So
I've pivoted away from that.
I've been thinking about it, but the thing that I have to say is, like, that was my first, like, real, like, next level up microphone purchase that I did, and there is the emotional attachment to it. So I might have to hold it onto it just for emotional reasons, because, like, there's history there, but I don't know. Anyways, throw that out there.
All right. You know, I was considering that too, but I thought, nah, I want to keep on to. But now that you mention it, you know, that could be a couple $100. So, you know, that could go for half a tank of gas these days.
Right? All right, well, let's go on to the next one. SP, you also had another update about Windows 11.
I've threatened this several times in the last few years. Yes, I think it's time to upgrade to Windows 11. We are T-minus almost 1 year to when Microsoft is going to mandate Windows 11. I think that'll get pushed back ultimately, but I think it's time on my podcasting computer, which is ironically the only computer in the house that is Windows 11 capable. I think it's time to go ahead and make that swap. A lot of the computers at work have been upgraded to Windows 11. I'm becoming more familiar with the user system, the OI. And also, there's less and less that I hear from podcasters of having issues with it. Matter of fact, I'm not hearing anything. So I think it's time for me to bite the bullet, as long as I have some downtime, and go ahead and upgrade to Windows 11.
I've used Windows 11 very much since it came out. It was shortly after. And I will still stand by, I think, that a lot of the issues that podcasters were saying was overblown. I will put full agreement into some of the UI changes, particularly around the way it's almost spammy now. I'm not discounting that, but I haven't seen any more issues notably on Windows 11 than I did on Windows 10. And Microsoft continued to split the panels just as much as they did in Windows 10. So yeah, you know, that those problems exist still on Windows 11. So I think you'll probably be fine once you're all settled in, but who knows? You never know with an upgrade. It can always go south.
The one thing I'm dreading about Windows 11 is when it is mandated, I'm going to have to upgrade whatever other computers that I want to continue to use in the house, because literally this is the only one that's capable of it. So if I want a laptop for podcasting on the road, I'll have to get something that's Windows 11 compatible. If I want any other computers in the house, I'll have to do that. There might be one other workstation in the house that I will want a computer at. So because the kids are gone, it's just me, and I have, you know, the podcasting thing. And if I have a laptop, whether that's a Mac or whether that's a Windows, you know, either one, I'll have to move to it. And then, Yeah, maybe one other workstation, which is literally a workstation, maybe scanning some pictures, that sort of stuff.
All right, well, I wanted to throw in here a change that I made, and guess what, SP? I've changed my keyboard again.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, so I couldn't resist for 2 years in a row a low profile keyboard made by Keychron. For those of you that haven't been following, a couple of years back I started to get into the whole mechanical keyboard needs. I like the feel of a mechanical keyboard, and I saw a deal on a full size Quote Pro, just the upper tier of a Keychron full size keyboard, low profile, and I wanted to give it a try. It was a deal I couldn't say no to, and I used it for about a week and a bit now, day to day. I do like it. A little less resistance as I'm pushing down the keys. I'm using still the red series, or the red key buttons, whatever you call them, the red keys on the actual keyboard, still on a low profile keyboard. Red switches, that's the word I was looking for. Red switches. And so not a lot of resistance there as it was, but I do like the low profile a little bit better, and it's a little quieter, which is nice. So I did get into that. It is the Keychron, as I flip it over to remember which model, the K5 Pro. The K5 Pro wireless keyboard, and I quite like it. And like I said, a bit quieter. So we'll see how long I like that. The only thing that kind of bugs me a bit about the low profile is there's that whole mindset thing, because they're the smaller keys. It can't help but remind me of the membrane keyboards, which they don't feel like it, but it reminds me of them. And so there's this whole mental thing that I got to get over, which is icky membrane keyboards. Anyways, there you go.
So in the near future, when we all switch to augmented reality, are you going to switch haptic gloves every 3 weeks? And the way that you swipe things in front of your face and stuff like that?
Absolutely, for sure.
Okay, thought so.
The next thing I want to quickly mention is during the off season here, I think that I might actually try to install a sit-stand riser, but I'm not going to get into the details. I might save that for the end of the year gear episode, but I do want to throw that out there that I might attempt that, because I'm going to try to get it installed in place so I don't have to fully take down all my monitors and stuff. And maybe I'll end up with no monitors. We'll see.
I went to that kind of configuration at work, and I will tell you, we did actually disconnect the monitors before we reconnected them. There was a lot of cables that we had to switch out, because in the stand format, there was a longer run. Most of the cables that we had were 6 feet, and we needed at least 10 feet cables to go to the stand position. But, whatever works for you, whatever actually, I get what you're saying. You want not to impact your life all that much. And I'm just telling you, it impacted our lives quite a bit at work when we did it. So, but we had a certain mindset of, okay, let's just get new cables.
Well, I will report back in our Discord of either the success or the disaster. So come to our Discord at betterpodcasting.com/Discord for possibly broken monitor photos.
That is going to be awesome.
Well, should we button up our season of media host discussion and get to our recap?
Yeah, let's go ahead and bubble wrap it and get it out the door.
All right, so we wanted to summarize and wrap up all of our findings from this season. We're not going to go through line by line. We're not going to go through and tell you the highlights and the lowlights of each media host or anything like that. But we wanted to have more of a bit of a conversation about the season. And let's just start right at the beginning there of why we did this, which is that we are leaving Libsyn. There is a lot of concerns we have had about Libsyn, going way back to episode 70 of Better Podcasting Live Chat, which you can find over on betterpodcasting.com if you want to look in there for the Better Podcasting Live Chat show, episode 70. SP did a whole block of information in there, a whole section in there about the concerns he had, and I agree with them. And then we also ended up recapping some other points to do with this on this show here, but really they were very similar to what was in episode 70. And SP, what are some of your highlights from that?
One of the issues is YouTube, how Libsyn had railed against YouTube and YouTube in the podcasting industry for a while. Then all of a sudden they're embracing it to the point where they consider themselves the most forward thinking of it. So that kind of swap without a huge mea culpa, that, okay, you can say that it's a big thing. Maybe it is to you. It is one of the things, right? So this is a compilation of different things. There was no resolution to their stock issue. Remember, the SEC had halted their trading, and Libsyn said that we agreed to it. Well, of course you're going to agree to it. There's nothing you could do about it. The SEC says you're not going to do it. They had come out and said that we will look for a resolution before the end of 2023 to our stockholders. It is now August of 2024, and no resolution is there now. So that just shows you how long this has drawn out. Believe somewhere around 2 years now. Libsyn, by admission, is rebranding as an advertising company, not a podcast media hosting company. This is via a CEO statement, as well as their actions, such as rebranding of AdvertiseCast as Libsyn Ads. They let go of software developers. The term that we were using were redundant because that is what Pod News used. Well, redundant in American terms means fired or let go or something like that. So they let go of software developers. And this is important because they are still, years later, struggling with their switch from Libsyn 4 to Libsyn 5. It's a dilemma, because there's still two interfaces that you can use, and there's neither one is 100%. So this is years later. There was an open letter to Libsyn from Neil Veligo, and that was, we read that in Better Podcasting Live Chat 70, or completely summarized that there. All of their press releases are for either advertising or for big podcasts that have come on board exclusively with Libsyn or something like that. And I mention this because they're not talking about the smaller podcaster or the hobby podcaster at all. And this is something that we talked about for years, they have embraced the multiple destinations, or we will give a separate RSS feed per destination out there so that you could turn it on and off. I thought that, when Stephen, you thought as well that was a big mistake over time. And it turned out to be a little less so as we migrated our shows off of Libsyn, but it was still a concern that we have, and we didn't see the need for using multiple RSS feeds. But I guess some people need it, and it is probably from an advertisement perspective or professional podcast perspective. As a hobbyist, we just didn't need to worry about it, and it may have complicated taking your show off of Libsyn. We didn't experience that, but maybe. Podcasting 2.0 support was not embraced. They did embrace the transcription tag once Apple Podcasts embraced it, but I just don't see them embracing the Podcasting 2.0 value for value or Bitcoin or Satoshi sort of thing, because it goes against their advertising capability. They implemented billing taxes for all their plans without telling you that they were going to do it. So all of a sudden there was this shift in how much you were paying, and it was more, and there was never any acknowledgement of it that I ever found. There might have been, I did not see it. And then we've mentioned it several times on the show, and nobody's corrected us yet. So I don't think it was ever announced that they all of a sudden started taking out billing. And then for me, there was snark and sarcasm of their public-facing employees. It was overbearing, overused, and not conducive to working with others, and that remains so to this day. And yeah, that's everything that we talked about in Better Podcasting Live Chat 70. Since then, Damien actually brought something to our attention that was in their company podcast called The Feed, And Rob Walsh, who's the VP of Podcaster Relations, I believe that's his title, he actually used client feeds to test Apple Podcast searches. This was acknowledged publicly in the feed. And the way he acknowledged it, it was a bunch of, shh, don't tell anybody. So it was like he didn't have permission of anybody. We don't know for sure if he had permission or not, but he portrayed it like he didn't have permission. So all of a sudden, you're just going to use my feed to test things? No, thank you. And this was actually editing show notes and podcast descriptions. So that didn't sit well for me. And Stephen, it didn't sit well for you either. So these are a lot of the reasons why we wanted to leave Libsyn. If there's any questions about that, please come to our Discord server and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you there.
Yeah, and I want to say that obviously feel pretty strongly about our choice to want to leave Libsyn for our future of supporting media hosts and whatnot. And I think after the season, we can confidently or even more confidently say that there are more modern approaches out there for a hobby podcaster that will likely save them money, especially if you're doing multiple podcasts. So we suspected that going into the season. And now that we have gone through this season, we can say that there are, especially if you're doing multiple podcasts.
So we came up with a criteria of things that we wanted to evaluate. We actually had a whole episode describing the criteria and throwing it out there for anybody to give us feedback on the criteria. As it happened, everybody agreed with the criteria, at least that we know of, because nobody disagreed with it. So we then started using that. We developed an ongoing short list based on our reviews as we went through our reviews. And now we're at the end of season 4. We're prepared to make the move for better podcasting. But before we talk about where we're moving better podcasting to, let's talk a little bit more about our overall takes this season.
So let's start off with what we reviewed. So if you missed it, because it was a lot, we don't fault you for that. If you missed the whole list of what it was we talked about Podbean, Pinecast, Spotify for Podcasters, Simplecast, Buzzsprout, Red Circle, Transistor, Substack, RSS.com, Captivate, Patreon, Spreaker, Acast, Castos, and we also asked for your suggestions several times throughout the season, and I think there was only a couple of those that came on the list because of that. So thank you to everybody who made suggestions. And as we went through this, of course, we looked and we evaluated that criteria through the lens of a hobby podcaster. We did. And where did we end up creating a short list with? Well, we ended... that was a weird wording.
I don't know. Did we chisel it on stone tablets?
And through all of this, we decided whether they were going to make it onto our short list or not. And our short list in the end ended up being quite short, right, SB?
Yeah, Podbean, Podcast, Spotify for Podcasters, and Red Circle. Along the way, I think we mentioned that Captivate was on our short list, but upon further evaluation, when we were talking about where we wanted to go, it actually came off our short list, and it is in another category right now. But we had said it was on our short list at one point in time. It is not on our short list. So we just
confused ourselves.
Yeah. We just ended up with those 4: Podbean, Pinecast, Spotify for Podcasters, and Red Circle.
But through all of this, there were several that we ended up looking at, and we basically ended it saying they're not on our short list, but they might work for you because they were very close, but there was a couple specific things for our personal desires that we thought took it off of our short list, but those limitations that were make or break for us, basically we acknowledge might not apply for every hobby podcaster. So we have a few that we wanted to say that weren't on the short list, but we're putting them on this sort of almost short list, things that we're really going to keep an eye out in the future for, but they were almost there. And that was Captivate was on there, Buzzsprout, Transistor, RSS, and Castos. Those ones there are all runner-ups, I would say.
Most of them are runners up because of download limits. And that's actually what took Captivate off of our short list and threw it into this category. Just couldn't stomach keeping the download limits in there. It's not how we roll. So it moved there. Buzzsprout had download limits and also does not include multiple RSS feeds. Transistor also has download limits. We described this in detail as we went through them. And then RSS has a download limit of 1 terabyte per month, mandatory re-encoding. And then RSS did state, though, that they were evolving. So we were interested in that. And so threw them in the we'll watch it category. And then also Castos. They don't have team logins. They don't have dynamic audio insertion. And there's no way to return a post to draft mode. But because of all of the other capabilities were there that we wanted, we're keeping them on our watch list, at least for now, if any news comes out about their development over time. And if they can dig into some of those things, particularly draft mode and team logins, then it would end up on our short list.
Now, let's talk about some of the interesting things that we saw along the way as we went through here. And the first thing is we wanted to acknowledge that as we went through, we had to modify our criteria because we were surprised that there were some things that came up. There were some capabilities that were missing and just some things that we went, okay, well, we probably should have thought about that. And the first one that we should have thought about was the ecological impact. Now, we mentioned that, but I'll be honest, we didn't really continue looking at that, but that was something that came up along the way because there was some reference to that during our discussions, and it's probably something we would have made a more active effort to pursue had we thought about it up front. Now, the one that really surprised us was the ability to return a post to draft, because if you are going and you've published a post and then all of a sudden you want to put it back to a draft state, we came across some very quickly that you couldn't do that. As well, a little bit later, we found some where you couldn't backdate an episode. So let's say you were putting something out there and maybe you were trying to fix something historically. You wanted to go and publish something earlier, make sure that it was showing up earlier in your feed. There are several out there that you can't backdate an episode. So we added that to the criteria. And then the one that really surprised us in the year 2024 was there were at least one that you couldn't make a season for your podcast, which is mind-blowing because that's such a standard thing now in the world of podcasting.
Also, there once was a capability with Anchor.fm that you could do everything in one app, all in one solution, we'll call it. And we found out that that is now basically a thing of the past. The closest you can get is with Pinecast, or not Pinecast, but Podbean right now. But most of the others actually use another service, like say Riverside, to then do that capability now. I guess it's just too much to put everything like that in one company as of today. I know even like Buzzsprout looked into it, but they're like, no, this is where you come to publish your episode. This is not where you come to actually create your episode. I think most of the other companies are thinking that as well. Also, another thing that we discovered was a thing of the past was social media integration. And that it was just maybe Libsyn that was experiencing an issue, but it's the API itself that is an issue. And when the APIs went away, then every company couldn't integrate with social media. And then there was very few companies that actually had social media actually available on their websites as well. So we were kind of surprised that that was the thing that was going away. I mean, how do you interact with everybody? I think all these companies are, what they're saying is if you're podcasting, you should interact. I was going to say interact in our ecosystem instead of going to another company with social media integration. So, okay. We also found, and this kind of shocked me, I thought everybody was going to be priced relatively the same, but there was a wide variety of affordability out there where you had some that had free tiers, you had some that had $100 tiers, and you were expected to use them with the same amount of features that existed. So when we put affordability as one of our criteria, I thought it would be a lot smaller margin between everybody, but it was literally all over the map.
Yeah, affordability was one that if we were to do it all over, I would actually have changed our metric of how we did it. We did it as a rating. I think we needed to get more detailed about that because of how broadly different it was in the price and the feature set. So yeah, that one surprised me.
Another thing that we were looking for, especially with the newfound push towards YouTube across the industry, was video podcasting solutions. And while there are some from a practical perspective, especially on a hobby podcaster budget, you're going to have to assume that you're not getting video hosting on your media host yet. This could be something that comes a few years in the future when both storage and bandwidth becomes a little bit cheaper even yet, but it just doesn't exist now. And then also consider where the audience goes to. If you're talking about a video show, they go to YouTube, especially long form content, which is the majority of hobby podcasts out there. So yeah, they're not going to necessarily find video podcasting capability, nor is it actually meaningful if you do find one, because again, most of the audience that's looking for a video show will go over to YouTube. Now, although we didn't like it a lot, there are this trend of several companies do start looking at limits to the downloads, and that's the factor that they look at by limiting your account, is the limiting of the number of downloads. We actually did some analysis on a couple of the reviews, Captivate and Transistor, where we looked at what is the nominal hobby podcast, how many downloads are they going to get per show, and then what does that actually translate to? Your mileage is going to vary quite a bit on this, and we gave some examples. But for the most part, we didn't like where this trend was going, and we still don't like pushing forward recommendations for these companies that have put the limits on the download side. We much rather control it on the upload side, and we really like companies that don't have upload or download limits and have no bandwidth limits, but then we wonder how they're going to stay in business when some people start to take advantage of it. So we again realized throughout the season, and we stated this many times, that we are for these companies putting some type of limits in. The download limits, that's a company preference, and I don't agree with it. And Steven, I don't think you do either.
Sorry about that. I had to quickly dart away. Sorry.
I kind of figured that once it was silent for a few seconds.
Yeah, 1 sec. Hold on. Just put my earbuds back in.
You'll have to go to a different screen.
I heard you start to say we did the analysis of
yeah, so I left it as I don't think that this is the proper metric to use to limit. Why we agree on limits, I don't believe this is a proper limit, and you don't agree to it either. And then I was throwing it over to you to agree with me.
Gotcha. Agreed. Sorry. What? Yeah, for sure. I will, though, throw in this counterpoint that I think that this is an area that specifically some of those ones that we talked about earlier would make some of those hosts work for some people, because some people won't care. But for us, it's where it lands with us, and it was our criteria. So there you go. Moving on a little bit here, we wanted to talk about some of the other areas here that that we found along the way, some things that were a little bit curious to us. We had some individual points that we wanted to bring to the table here, and I know you had some thoughts there about ad sales and placement of ads.
There was a strong emphasis across the industry on ad sales and placement, either through some sort of, dynamic audio insertion, in particular the ad insertion, whether it's dynamic or not. So there's a strong emphasis across the industry for that, because that's where the money is coming from now. So you're just going to see more and more of that. It's either going to be that, or it's going to be something that's more value for value over the podcasting 2.0. Another issue that came across is previous to the season, I can't remember actually moving an RSS feed anywhere. So I was being way cautious about that. Of course, over the years, I had listened to a lot of advice about how to do it right and how to effectively do it without losing a majority of your audience or whatever. I quickly found out through beta testing that this turned into no big deal whatsoever, except for the few cases that it was, and that was mostly company based and not necessarily where the RSS feed was going. But from what I found, most of the destinations that I was publishing to swapped in an hour or two. There was one in particular, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but there was one in particular that took a day every time to flip over into the new RSS feed. And I was like, okay, it wasn't one of the big ones, so it was no big deal for me. But basically, if you use common sense, if you flip your RSS feed over, all the destinations are going to pick that up. You might want to throw an episode in there for people that roll their own app or import your RSS feed directly into their app for listening. You might want to put one last episode in there of saying, hey, look, if you're hearing this, the active RSS feed has moved. This is where you can find it. And then that's going to be it. That'll be the last episode they get. But I was okay, given the two shows that I was moving back and forth, of moving the show. And within 2 days, I was feeling comfortable enough, even though I never did it, to actually shut down the old feed, shut down the old account. So I would say within 2 days, the majority of your audience is going to swap over. And yeah, aside from that, there were some issues of importing shows from one podcast media host to another. We'll go over that in more detail next season. But just to say that, just be wary of how you're doing it. Do a test run. Don't automatically forward your RSS feed over until you're absolutely sure that all of your episodes have imported correctly. We'll get into more detail next season, like I said, but be comfortable in the fact that it's not necessarily as big of a deal as others have made it out to be. I mean, your audience is your audience. That is why you're doing the podcast ultimately, and you don't want to lose any of them. But the way everybody updates now in 2024, 2 days, that's all it really takes. And the majority of your audience should go over. If your majority of your audience hasn't gone over, then you have some looking into why that is. But I would routinely forward my RSS feed, and as soon as I did, I would drop a new episode in the feed, and within an hour, that episode was available on most destinations.
I know you also had a thought there to do with the whole hobby podcaster aspect and how we found there was so many places that were just like, hey, hobby podcasters, come here.
Yeah. This stems back to Better Podcasting Live Chat number 70. We put up an open call to all of the podcast media host providers. And we said, if you have something that caters to hobby podcasters, let us know. There were crickets. So that's why season 4 was born, because nobody was saying, hey, we can be supportive of hobby podcasters. And we found out through our reviews that very rarely do you get any support. And I will call out one company specifically because we talked about it in our review. RSS.com was working back and forth with us on, hey, what do you have that can be a good suggestion on how we can move forward with our product? And we ended up, after a week or so, sending them a list, a laundry list of stuff that would be important for hobby podcasters. I have yet to hear back from RSS.com on that. You know, maybe a response is coming. It's been months, but they have not responded to us, and I don't think they will at this point, but I could be wrong. One of the things that they did tell us is they were actively working on the development of their capability, and if they could insert anything, they definitely would. Just no idea where that is. You know, sometimes you get into a developmental cycle and you don't see anything for a year and a half until something comes out. So I won't say it's definitely not coming, but we have not been approached back at all after that. So because of that, and because nobody else was willing to talk to us about that, I have to say that companies aren't interested in your business as a hobby podcaster. They're interested in big business. They're interested in advertisement. They're interested in monetizing through, you know, some portion of a Satoshi through value for value. That's where their mindset is.
I'd like to just slightly go off of that point there, and actually away from the value to value, because I agree with your comment there about them being focused on where the money is. But the thing that I would say is not so much that, but it was the fact that there were so many different services that we came across that had their own ad service or had their own monetization service that they created that wasn't Podcasting 2.0, that seemed to indicate to me that they were looking for the money, because they were sitting there creating revenue tools there, obviously trying to get a cut of it rather than being through the Podcasting 2.0, Satoshi method and whatnot. So I just put a little slightly different note or viewpoint on that.
Building on that, memberships and subscriptions were also pretty big too, right? So
Yeah, that's true.
I'll agree with that. And the last thing that I'll say is the podcasting space is changing and changing rapidly. So I'm actually very fortunate and very glad that we took this time to do these reviews this year, because things have changed in the last few years. And if we didn't do these reviews, I don't think either of us would have seen how much it has changed. And throughout all this, Better Podcasting is going to be there at least to describe the strengths and the pitfalls of what these things in the infrastructure are morphing to and what the impact will be on hobby podcasters. So this was a key indicator to me to say podcasting is not what it was in 2013 at all, or 2015 when we started Better Podcasting.
Now, I had a couple of things that I wanted to throw in here of observations that I had. And first one I wanted to mention is that the podcaster dashboards, the dashboards podcasters are using, they're basically a hot mess across the board here. There's not a lot of consistency for the way that these are being designed. And I was actually surprised how many of these felt dated. There's a lot out there that felt like they were kind of modeled after UI of yesterday versus today. So there's a lot of inconsistency, a lot of, experimenting that these hosts are doing. And there's a lot of opportunity, I think, across the board to clean them up.
The one commonality that I would say across the board, if there was one commonality, is they all seem to want to design a UI that was mobile compatible.
Agreed. I'd agree with that. The other thing that I wanted to call out here was a pleasant surprise. It was that as a whole, I found help to be quite reliable. There were several I called out along the way of being poor, but overall, I was able to use the help to sort of hit the ground running. As I would go through some of these reviews, I'd be able to search up different things in the help. And yeah, there was consistency problems we found, but I did find overall that there seems to be some attention being paid to the different help pages that are on the media hosts.
I would have to agree with that. I was more of a grip it and rip it along the way, but when I ran into an issue, I went to the help, and across the board help was largely more helpful than I thought it was going to be. There were a couple along the way that I was just befuddled by, and we called them out throughout the season, so it's not a mystery at all, but for the most part, help was pretty good.
Now, the next one that I wanted to mention was I didn't know that I was going to be able to do this, but I actively went into this season wanting to do this, and it's that aside from my existing Pinecast paid membership, because I've had a membership or a subscription to Pinecast for a while, I did the entire season personally, only paying for one service, and I believe that was Captivate, when I forgot to hit cancel on the trial period. And why I wanted to bring this up here was because I was able to utilize trial plans. Yes, I had to put credit cards in for several, but cancel before. I was able to do all of this without paying. And I want to call that out because I think that's important as a hobby podcaster who might not be sure which one is going to work for them. It's something where I can confidently say that you can get a reasonable expectation for many of these without paying. Yes, you have a very limited time to do that in the trial, but there's a lot you can learn just by logging in and doing that. And so I wanted to call that out, that aside from user error, I did the whole season without paying, with the asterisks of the Pinecast subscription I already paid for.
Yeah, and you made the comment about needing a credit card along the way, and this goes way back to our episode of Can You Podcast Anonymously? One of the things you can't really do about it is you're going to have to pay for a service somewhere along the way. And most of the way that is accepted for payment is credit cards. We actually had that as part of our criteria along the way, and I thought there would be more of an option to go away from that. But I only remember one or two podcast media hosts that you could pay for it outside of a credit card, whether that was through Bitcoin or maybe a Venmo or something like that. So, podcasting anonymously, this is just another thing that says, no, you're not going to be able to do that, because to have a credit card, you have to have an identity, because the credit card is usually tied to some sort of fiscal identity. In the United States, it's a social security number, ultimately through bank accounts or whatever. But, it's just the way of the future. So if you're listening to this as a hobby podcaster, as a lot of hobby podcasters are, and they want to podcast anonymously, this is just another feather in the cap that says, no, you're not going to be able to do it.
Although it would be interesting, we should have tried this. I wonder, I should have got a prepaid credit card and seen whether it would accept it or not. Darn, missed opportunity.
Right. And even if you do that, there is some traceability. You have to be very good to not be
You can
able
buy it
to
with
trace
cash.
that back. I know there's usually some sort of record of that somewhere, whether it's a camera or something like that.
Fair enough. All right. Well, the last thing I wanted to call out before we get to talking about our final recommendations is all about Podcasting 2.0, because I will admit, going into this, I've made my opinion very clear about Podcasting 2.0, and I was surprised how much Podcasting 2.0 support there was in some level across the different media hosts. There was definitely a lot more than I thought there would be, but I do want to also say I was equally surprised at how fractured that support that existed was. It was all over the map of which features were being supported when we saw something that had any level of Podcasting 2.0 support. And so that kind of actually makes me a little more inclined to say that as it currently stands, I still question how important Podcasting 2.0 really is if there's not a consistent approach across all of these media hosts that we saw. But that might be something relevant to certain people, which is why we included it.
Yeah, and I know that wallets are a big concern, or at least were a couple of weeks ago. Quite frankly, I've lost the bubble because I've been busy doing something else for the last couple of weeks. I got to get back into that. But the whole ability to get invested into the Satoshi architecture was fractured, at least in the United States, and I think Canada too. So that might have been putting a big dent in the whole thing as well. We'll see. We'll see how Podcasting 2.0 is going to evolve in the future here. And we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about the effects on hobby podcasters just like we would everything else.
All right, so let's talk about what are our final recommendations from the short list. Well, we're going to actually each put out 3 because we came up with a final 3 that we wanted to talk about, and we had reasons for that. And we're not going to just recommend just one, because if anything this media host should have shown you is there's a variety of different approaches to meet a variety of different needs, and your needs might be different than the podcaster next to you. So we have actually come up with 3 that are slightly different, and we're going to put that out here. SP, do you want to start it off here with what your 3 were and the angle you have for each of them?
Yeah, I'll start off by first of all saying our short list is our options. Quite plainly, we just chose 3 each. So there's 4 out there, and I have 3 and you have 3, and they comprise the 4. The first one on my short list is Red Circle. If I had one podcast media host service to recommend to just about any hobby podcaster, I would say Red Circle. Now, they're going to be a little bit on the pricier side for all the options than anywhere else. But in my opinion, it's the most representative to support hobby podcasters with multiple shows. And I had the opportunity to use them as an import location. Stephen mentioned that before. Their import capability surprised me as how good it was dealing with issues in feeds that were coming in. I actually leveraged it to transfer several of my other shows. So if you're looking to move somewhere, Red Circle is an excellent place to move to if you think you might have some problems with your RSS feed. Now, the 5 team accounts that it lists at the $29 a month option, it might be limiting for some with multiple shows, but think of it this way. It's 4 more accounts than a lot of the other options out there, such as Libsyn, which we're moving away from, which only allows 1 login. Now, you can go more than that, but you're going to be paying close to $100 per month for unlimited team accounts. And Red Circle does have a free option as well that you can explore, and it allows you to move up and down. So Red Circle would be my first recommendation to somebody that doesn't want to hear a lot about options and just say, hey, Red Circle is where you should be going to. My second option would be Podbean. It's most representative of the old guard of podcast media host providers for a single show with a single login. It is lower priced, but it also does not allow you to go into some sort of archive tier. So the price that you're paying while you're producing is the same price that you're going to pay long term if you want to keep your show active on Podbean for the long term. I will say the websites are on the better tier of options that are out there. So if you're looking at a good looking website, Podbean websites are probably on the higher side there. Podbean does have a proven track record, and yes, we found out, and we'll talk about this later, there are some limits involved, but I wonder how much they are enforced and how much they actually mean. And it's not a hard limit. It's like a soft limit, and we'll talk about that later. So Podbean would be my second recommendation for somebody that's coming off of, say, Blueberry or Libsyn. And I just want something that's most like what I have today, and they aren't interested in trying Red Circle or any of the other options out there. So, okay, well, go with Podbean. A lot of people are happy with Podbean. And then the final one would be Pinecast. Pinecast has a lot of capability for the cost. It's also got the most bare bones things that you would need out of the podcast media host providers that we reviewed that are, usable. It does have unlimited episodes and unlimited shows. So you can post an episode on 20 different shows a day on it, and they wouldn't bulk at it because there's unlimited bandwidth. There is a limit per episode of 80 megabytes. There is an overage that you can eat into over time. In my experience, most of the shows that I'm producing are around the 80 megabyte level anyway. And then you can go to mono and you can, reduce your quality of your episodes to get there. If you produce like a 3-hour episode, well, I mean, maybe Pinecast isn't going to be good for you. It does have tiering options that are available for a price, which is something that I wish more of the podcast media host providers would do. You can pay extra for hardcore analytics, crew or collaborator accounts, hi-fi, which is higher definition episodes that are available, and then the growth option, which is the review monitor. And we discussed all this in our review. So that's some of the good stuff. Some of the cons, in addition to the episode limit, and I'll put limit in quotes because you can upload a episode that's more than 80 megabytes, but then you're eating into your overage for the month. The website from Podcasts, it's rather basic indeed. And the options are, I've never spent a lot of time on them, but I can't find a good one that works great for me. There are definitely import oddities with Pinecast that I have experienced, and we'll get in more into that next season. It was very frustrating, and it's hard to say how much of that was Pinecast and how much of that was where I was coming from, but we'll go into everything. There is no author field for each episode. It's just at the show level. So if you have a high level guest, there's no way to highlight them in the author field, which is searchable for Apple Podcasts, for example. The dashboard itself is very minimalistic, and there is no dynamic audio insertion available. And that's one of the key capabilities that I wanted in a podcast media host provider as I was going forward. But we'll talk later about where we wanted to choose and what the considerations were. So you can see the difference between Red Circle, Podbean, and Pinecast and where that fell in our decision space.
So for me, I will say that I found Red Circle also being the one that if there's someone coming to me today and the price of Red Circle worked for them, I would definitely, it would be the first I would recommend, just because it does to me feel like it's the most comprehensive modern approach that we came across this whole season. You know, it just had the right balance of everything that I would expect a modern approach to have. And it lined up, of course, very well in our criteria. So I definitely find that one easy to recommend. I don't have too much other points on this compared to what you say, but I will point out that I personally felt like this was the first one through our whole review as we were going through. It was the first one where I felt a strong level in confidence in what I was seeing, but the price might not work for you. There's definitely... for someone who has multiple podcasts that want to have multiple people accessing those podcasts, it's asking a lot. And that's why I definitely would put price first if I was to discuss this with a hobby podcaster, because I think there's a lot of hobby podcasters that would be out at the price.
Yeah, and your next one, I don't disagree with, but I have a personal problem with this just because of the history. And Stephen, I'm glad that you put it out there because it absolutely will work for a lot of hobby podcasters. I just can't in good conscience pull the trigger on it.
The next one that I have, which I think, my personal opinion, I think it might be one of the top ones for a hobby podcaster who is leading with price, is Spotify for podcasters. And we talked to Chris Farrell, our co-host from the Gonna Geek Show, on how come he switched from Podbean to Spotify for podcasters. And when he made that switch, I had some question marks in there. And then, we did the review, and then we had him come in and talk. And I can really understand why someone who is leading with price would want to go there. There were enough features for a hobby podcaster. It worked. Yes, there were a lot of things as we went through there that felt like it was remnants of the Anchor days. And I think that leads into the concern I have for Spotify for podcasters, which is that I don't know what Spotify's plan in the podcast space is. They've made a lot of changes. At one point, when they first came in, we talked all about how we had red flags, concerns about the future of Spotify. And then there was a good period where we're like, okay, you know what? Very clear. Those are unfounded now. They're good. And now I think they're back on our caution list because they have made such drastic changes in the podcast space of how they are handling that, both from the production side and things like Spotify for podcasters. So I definitely would recommend them, only with the caveat that I don't know where it's going to be in a few months from now, and they have a history of making changes to this product. So beware. But I think for someone who is trying to get into podcast and save money, I think it will do a lot of what they want.
The caveat that I'll throw in here is if something does happen. Remember what I said earlier. If you do put in a 301 redirect within 48 hours, most of your destinations are going to pick up your new RSS feed. So if you're worried about Spotify for podcasters going under, I guarantee you they're going to give you more than 48 hours notice. Just take that time, throw it somewhere else, and know within 48 hours, most of your audience won't even know what happened.
And then the last one that was on my list was Pinecast. And I wanted to put this on here because I think, like, out of everything that we have, they are really tailored towards the user who wants some choice in what they are paying for. If you were to take all of their add-ons, which in full confession, that if you were to put all the add-ons on, you can find other media hosts for less. But for the user who only needs a couple of those features, you get choice in what you're putting your money towards, because they really operate on an a la carte feature or basis. It's like, hey, here's your basic thing. Then what add-ons do you want to be able to add on to your basic pack? I also, after everything I saw, I think that they have the best handling of the per episode file size limitation. I think the fact that they do that surge bucket, and we discovered during our review that surge bucket was based off of per podcast, it wasn't on the account level. I think that it is the most flexible approach if you are imposing a per episode upload limit. So I thought that that was the best approach. Now, limitation wise, yes, there's a lot of argument that there's other media hosts out there that allow higher upload, but I like the approach. And the other thing that I wanted to mention with them here is that I would also recommend them with a caveat, because we have yet to see any indication that our original concern back when they came on the scene many, many years ago is any different. And it's the fact that Pinecast still appears to be pretty much one person operated. There's some risks we've talked about to this approach. You know, if something happened, who was there to take over? Would it be possible? You know, as well as many other concerns that could be in there. But I do also want to put out there that though there are some technical hurdles that we will discuss in the future in another season, overall we did get a little bit of positive support when we were dealing with Matt over on Pinecast, and we'll come back to this actually specifically in a minute, but I wanted to put that in here in the discussion of the one-person approach, because there was still a very friendly approach to the service in there, which is actually the positive of a small support team or a one-person support team, is a lot of times they do go the extra mile when you are dealing with them, and I wanted to call that out here as well. So in summary, SP didn't put Spotify for Podcasters on his list. I didn't put Podbean on my list, and your mileage may vary.
All right, Steven, what everybody's been waiting for, and I'll bet you a lot of people have guessed. What did we choose? Well, at the moment is the key phrase there. We both ended up on importing our shows from where they were to Pinecast. Predominantly, the pricing was right for us. As we disclosed earlier, we have been grandfathered on the lesser price per month, which is $5 per month. And it had all the features that we really wanted overall. So Pinecast, we went back and forth, and you heard both of us talk very highly about Red Circle, but just because of the pricing, Pinecast is where we ended up, really.
Although I do want to call out that they don't have the Kurt Russell mode. You cannot return a post to draft, and maybe we should recommend that to Matt, because that is a feature that I've fallen victim to before, where I've accidentally published the post and they go, oh no, and then needed to take it back. So I would like to see return to draft implemented.
They do have the capability to make the post only available to subscribers. And if you don't have any subscribers, it's effectively a draft mode. So I have used that. That's not to say that it is a true draft mode, and I would agree with you there. So as we started doing this transfer to Pinecast, we started running into some technical issues. There was an RSS feed issue for me, for Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. in particular. That's where the first one, it wasn't the only, but that was the first podcast that we ran into. First of all, the RSS feed was a lot. It was 12 megabytes. So that's big for an RSS feed. So then we started looking into it, finding out what was wrong with it. And for the first time in a long time, I ran it through an RSS validator. There was some HTML code in there from the early days that had not been taken out, that was causing the feed to fail the import. And this is where I go back to Red Circle imported the feed without any problems. They went ahead, took it, and some of the others did the same thing. But Red Circle in particular took the feed and they made it smaller. And I thought that was great. Now, Pinecast, eventually I went through and I took like 3.5 weeks. And I went through every single episode and I took out as much HTML code as I could possibly take out. This dramatically reduced the feed size. I was somewhere around the 8 megabyte size when I actually successfully imported it over to Pinecast. Also, I will say that Matt Basta from Pinecast went out of his way to explain what was happening. And in his words, not only did the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. RSS feed fail the validation, it spectacularly failed the validation. As a matter of fact, Matt even said he had never seen an RSS feed that was more screwed up than the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. feed, which surprised me because I've been on Libsyn with that show since 2011 or 2012 timeframe. And it's been working okay. So what was the deal? Well, back in the day, it was used as a blog post and as an RSS feed. And because of that, there was a lot of unnecessary formatting that went into it. I even had pictures in there at one point in time. Libsyn had cut all those out years ago successfully. So that wasn't the issue. But for Libsyn to not send me a note at any point in time and say, hey, SP, this feed is really jacked up. We need to work on making it clean. It would have been better for them. It would have been better for me because a smaller feed means less bandwidth for them, right? And it just didn't happen. Also, upon import, the descriptions were not just plain text. They came in as formatted descriptions. And then also in the subtitle, a lot of the times, or the subdescription, it imported the actual episode descriptions in there. So I can't tell if this was a Pinecast issue or if this was a Libsyn issue or both, but there were some issues with the RSS feed. And there is a cautionary tale to you that if you're planning on doing this overnight, don't. Make sure that you do it. And when you do it, you go in and you look at your new RSS feed, wherever you move to, and you make sure that everything's there that you want. Make sure that your descriptions are what you want. Make sure all the metadata on your episode is what you want. Make sure, like in Pinecast's case, it doesn't have an author field, but if the authors are moving over, make sure they have moved over successfully. So everything in the feed, make sure you do that before you close out the other feed, because you can always re-import the feed. You can always choose somewhere else to import the feed to. But the second you delete your account where it exists right now, then it's gone forever. You have no way to go back. So for example, with Libsyn, if you're moving it, go back down to the $5 a month plan, move your stuff over, make sure it's good to go, and then put the RSS redirect in. Do not put the RSS redirect in before you have verified that it is a good import. And Stephen, you also did this with a show and you're like, hey, look, this doesn't look right. So you ran into the same issue. It wasn't just one show. It was multiple shows with me and it was a couple shows for you.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to call out with the whole import thing is I would suggest, before, if you're going to close your account and you know that you're going to be importing it, go to your old feed and just open up the RSS feed in a web browser, use the save as to save a copy of that old feed so that if by chance there's something that's missing, yeah, you got to go looking through the RSS code, but maybe you can go in and dig it up. And also be aware that it might not be feasible for you to go check everything. You have 521 episodes of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. as of today. And here's the problem is you mentioned Red Circle eventually imported it successfully, but reduced the file size. What was missing? It might very well be just all the junk was missing, but you know, there could be something else that somebody imports and it goes missing. And so be aware that importing from media host to media host, you know, if they've got tools there to solve problems for bloated feeds and things like that, you know, in the end, missing information is missing information. And what is that going to be? Hopefully it's stuff that doesn't affect it, but you just need to know that it could be a bigger lift than we actually, I think, anticipated at the beginning of this season here, depending on what you get on the other side of the import.
Since I wasn't running into any of these issues with the dead shows that I was importing back and forth, maybe it was because they were small, maybe because they didn't have formatted posts or whatever, I didn't really put a lot of stock into this. But I know in one case, when I imported Starling Tribune from Libsyn to Pinecast, there was like 3 episodes that didn't import, and I had to send Matt a message, said, okay, is this another RSS feed issue or whatever? And he said, no, let me run the import again. And he did. And it was a limitation issue from his words on Libsyn, where it just ran into an issue of so many episodes, like 300 episodes, were trying to come over at the same time. It's just a lot of data, and some of the data was lost in the initial import. So he just imported it again and said, hey, you're good to go then. So be prepared to have to use the help function. I have used the help function for a lot of things. For instance, Castos, I had to approach them because they did not, last week when we did Castos, I then imported that show over to Pinecast. Castos did not recognize the Pinecast RSS feed as a valid feed type just because of the URL. So Castos worked with me great. Within a day, within a few hours, actually, they put in a special code to be able to both validate and then also, in my particular case, just get it out without going through the validation step of doing the RSS redirect. So kudos on Castos for that. You're going to run into some issues, and just be ready to contact support and use the support. And this could happen over the course of a few days. In the case of importing Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., it took a month because I took the extra step and I corrected the entire feed before I imported it. That was on me. That was just one person, because Libsyn only allows one login. It was one person over the course of 1 month going through 520 episodes. Yeah, that's what I had to do. I had to change the entire metadata on every episode. 520 episodes. It takes some time to do that.
Yeah, and that might be something that helps determine where you end up going, because I will say that as we got to the point that Red Circle was importing Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Pinecast still wasn't, there's multiple times that I kept saying to SP, so maybe it's time for you to choose Red Circle, just kept kind of saying, checking in with him, is it time? And in the end, you opted to go and fix those. Someone else might go, you know what, I'm just going to pay more because it's working with Red Circle. Or if they choose another media host, up from our list and choose to try that and it works, that could be the case. So, I guess the last thing that I'll say about the import function itself is that while we did test it throughout with these test feeds, your feed may vary, and our experience while we went through each of these media hosts might end up be a little bit different because you never had problems with Pinecast, and look at all the problems you ended up with for Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. going into Pinecast. And the last thing I want to just throw in here about the whole Pinecast discussion, because Better Podcasting will be the next one we'll be importing, is unfortunately it means there's a lot of WordPress posts that I have to manually go in and update. Because one of the faults that we've always had with Pinecast is the fact that when you look at the URL you're supposed to use for the feed or for the file, it has not a standard naming convention. It's a name that they have generated .mp3. Basically, if I upload Better Podcasting 303.mp3, the actual file link in the end is not that, which means there's no easy way for me to search and replace in the WordPress database to the new location. If the file format was the same and all was changing was the directory structure, we use WordPress on the Gonna Geek site, on the Better Podcasting site. I'd be able to go in and do a search and replace, but I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm going to have to go in and manually change all of those, and it is one of the gripes. And even though we're choosing Pinecast, and this is a fault of Pinecast, I was very frustrated along the way to see this happen in more than one place. So I wish I didn't have to do this. And it was a consideration when I was thinking about all of this is it worth still going with Pinecast for this? But in the end, I said, yeah, I'll do the manual work. Although I might try to get a little creative with the script to maybe make it a little bit easier on myself, or I'll just manually do it because it might be less work for me to actually change the links than try to write the script. We'll see.
So in the end, things changed over the course of this season. We had several podcast media hosts that either rolled out dramatic new services, complete rewrites, or just little tweaks along the way. That's going to continue to happen. And because it's going to continue to happen, our reviews are going to have to morph over time. Even our criteria might morph over time because new capabilities will come in, and some of the older capabilities, such as the ID3 tags, do they really need to be there or not? We've argued for us, they do. But for other people, it's like, I don't care about them. So, maybe that's as an example, something within 2 or 3 years, we'd be like, okay, well, now we can just get rid of them because it doesn't matter. So with that, our reviews will try to keep track of stuff, but it's not going to be like a huge segment every time. We're not going to become the Podcast Media Host review podcast. We're going to take things for hobby podcasters and just put things into context as things evolve over time. We chose Pinecast. We know that you might not choose Pinecast. You might choose Red Circle. You might choose something else that you're comfortable with. We had a lot of people approach us about Acast, for example. I don't anticipate there being a big rush from Acast to Red Circle, but in case there is, you're welcome for providing, the criteria and the review to do it. If you have questions, please come to our Discord. If anybody has some supportive words to say for your particular Podcast Media Host providing service that we did not cover, you're welcome to, but we're not going to cover that in the future. So anyway, it's been a long, more than half a year covering all this stuff, and I'm glad we did it, but I quite frankly do not want to go down this path anytime soon again.
And one last thing, actually, hold on. Yeah, let me do something. 1 second. We'll put that into there. Hit the wrong button. Okay.
We were on the, yeah.
Agreed.
This is where we here at Better Podcasting turn the show over to you as we run through some of your feedback. We call this segment Better Podback.
All right, let's get to some Better Podback, and we'll start off with one right from our live chat as we're recording. Damien the DM's in our chat, and he said, I'm honestly surprised that both of you said you'd recommend Red Circle to new hobby podcasters, but are choosing something else for yourselves. Yes, we did, but we both emphasized pricing. And in the end, pricing is important to both of us. And Red Circle is too expensive for us. And it is something that there is just not the value that we want to be in because of the tier you have to get to with Red Circle. So pricing is very different for each person, for sure. And so someone might find that that's okay. And that's why, for me personally, I would lead that Red Circle discussion with pricing. And I can personally think of multiple people that would be out at the pricing, especially in the middle tier or having to go up a tier just because it's too much. And for us, yeah, pricing was a variable.
I'll add as a secondary variable to me was the team accounts, where Red Circle at the $30 a month plan only allows 5 team accounts. And with Pinecast, you can get more than that. With Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. alone, I have 3 co-hosts. They all have access. So those 3 co-hosts and me, that's 4 accounts already. And if you add you in for Better Podcasting or for whatever else, and then if I have other co-hosts on other shows like Artie's Attic, then that bumps that above the 5. So for me, also team accounts was a secondary consideration, but I don't know how many people would have that as a consideration going forward. So just like pricing, it's individual as per your whatever your needs are.
Moving on, we also had in our Discord M Stubblefield talk about Podbean and bring up the limitations. And they said, so I just listened to your whole season of Media Host reviews. First off, thank you for listening. Continuing on with M Stubblefield's message, said, I know you dinged RSS.com for having unlimited downloads with a fair usage policy with 1 terabyte limit, but were you aware that Podbean does the same thing? The definition of fair usage is not so easy to find, and then M Stubblefield ended up linking to the terms of service where they listed that unlimited audio and unlimited plus plans include up to 1,000 gigabytes per month, and then had some others for the business and enterprise plans. So yeah, this is something that we did miss. Obviously, we were looking through this as much as we could, but there might be some things we missed. We are not going to pretend we are the ones that invested days and days and days into researching every nook and cranny. No, we just didn't have the time for putting a very deep dive into each of these services, but we did not see this. So there you go.
Also, I want to point out by the verbiage here, it says if you surpass the bandwidth and you do not switch your plan, you may see reduced download speeds. It does not say that your podcast will cease to download. It says reduced download speeds. So if you're okay making your rather large audience at that point download at a slower level, and you can continue to do that, that's on you. I would say if you have an audience that's downloading more a terabyte a month, you probably should be able to monetize and get a better plan somewhere. But I did not see this, as I said before, we talk about it later. I did not see this as a hard limit. I saw that as a soft limit. And I did appreciate learning about this. It didn't change my opinion, but I do appreciate learning about this because if somebody is on that precipice, when I ask, well, how many downloads a month do you get? And then they tell me, and then I say, well, how big is your average episode? Then I can start calculating and say, no, Podbean might not be there. But that's a nuance, I think, that I don't think is, for a hobby podcaster, is not really going to be there all that much. But like I said, thank you very much. Neither of us caught this. And had we caught it, it would have probably been a bigger factor over the last few months.
Yes, thank you very much. We also had back to Damien the DM in our Discord ahead of this episode. He had guessed that our final would be between Pinecast and Red Circle. So there you go. Way to know us, Damien. That's why you are the honorary third and second.
Official.
The official. That's right. The official, I was going to say third co-host, but I forgot. We replaced you, or replaced me, and with... Sorry. And that's why you're the honorary third Wait, no, we replaced me with you. So actually you're the honorary, or is it official, second co-host of this podcast? Because I think I'm the third one now, if that's where it all landed.
Sure. We'll go with that. That's not technically what it is whatsoever, but okay. If that's your understanding of it, I can sleep tight at night knowing that.
Fair enough. And then lastly, in the whole media host discussion, we did have Waffles say that he had hoped to hear us in our final episode talk about Blueberry and why we chose not to look at them. And the summary is, if we didn't fully state this, we alluded to it early on, is that there are many things about how Blueberry is that both SP and I disagree with. And one of the criterias we put in there, I'm just going to call it out, is whether or not you can associate with the staff in there. That's one of the things we put in there. And we feel pretty strongly that we don't like several of the things that we've seen with Blueberry ourselves. And so for that purpose, we actually didn't end up wanting to review them because it wasn't a consideration for us moving off of Libsyn. And we just don't like several of the things about how Blueberry is ourselves.
Also, I got at least one request for us to review SoundCloud, and based on the fact that SoundCloud has not updated its podcasting backend at all since 2016, probably before that, there have been a lot of changes in the podcast infrastructure and RSS feed since then. Transcripts recently, there was the whole Apple Podcast tag change in 2017. Yeah, SoundCloud hasn't done any of that. So I wasn't interested in doing SoundCloud whatsoever. That's another example. Why we didn't review Libsyn? Well, we did de facto review Libsyn by using them for so long and for going over our reasons to leave Libsyn. So that's the three that we weren't really going to review this year whatsoever.
And moving on to one last piece of Better Podback, which is not related to Media Host, again was from Damien the DM, and he wanted to mention that following up to the discussion about the Spotify for Podcasters app, that it's a super basic app for the podcast portal and dashboard. He says it has things like your stats and audience stuff, as well as their comments and polls feature, and I wanted to make sure to call this out right now because it'll be a while till our next episode is there until our next episode. And I think that this is something we talked about last week, so let's follow up about that right now while we can.
Yeah, the actual polls that they used to ask for, or questions that they used to ask for, is gone, and they've instituted full-on comments now. So they've actually gotten rid of their old system. They've instituted a new system. We'll see how long this lasts. I like the innovation, but at the same time, this is a major change in how Spotify works for the interaction. I think they're going for a more YouTube feel. You imagine that. So we'll just see how long this lasts and if it's a deal at all. One thing that I've noticed over the years is that reviews on Apple Podcasts, they've become lesser and lesser actually requested by other podcasters. So I think you're seeing like the movement away from Apple Podcasts and to other sort of integration. I think most of the interaction happens over in social media. On most shows, if you have a YouTube channel, not a YouTube podcast, but a YouTube channel, I can see a lot of the interaction happening over there. Spotify is going to have to do a lot of work to get there. And we didn't say it before, but I am concerned about Spotify's health. They did let go a lot of personnel from their podcasting portion of their business. So they continue to operate. They had the whole debacle over the podcast stats that happened. The Megaphone is now accredited again. So they're learning as they go. And I don't know how much of this learning is because of the loss of personnel over time and if they can make a go of it with their current economic status. So we'll just see where Spotify for podcasters go. And I think the comments are part of that.
So that's going to take us to the end of our long season finale of Better Podcasting, Season 4. That's right, you made it through, and congratulations to you. You should definitely go and celebrate by listening to other Better Podcasting episodes. Go to betterpodcasting.com. We've got a whole back catalog there, as well as the Better Podcasting live chat, which has not had an episode for a very long time, but you go listen to the back catalog of that, and the Better Podcasting live chats with SP. There is an S on that. Make sure you go back and dig into that back catalog while we are away over the next month plus-ish, and come back in September for Season 5 of Better Podcasting. We're excited to get back to that. And if you want to check out other awesome geeky podcasts, please go to gonnageek.com. There's awesome geeky podcasts over there. And one of the ones that I heard was going to be going on there pretty soon was SP's Spotify for Podcasters podcast. I heard he's going to start a podcast just to go on there. That's what I heard.
No, but you will hear me on an episode of Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. My return for 1 week, at least for now, will be reviewing Deadpool and Wolverine. That is set for as we record this tomorrow. So by the time this comes out, that might be out as well. I don't know, since I have to edit that one, how long that's going to take. But yeah, I return for a week there. And then later on, when there is a new series on Disney Plus, I will return for the fall over there as well. And that is ongoing. And you mentioned Season 5 of Better Podcasting. I'm going to throw it out to our audience. If you have anything that you want us to cover in Season 5, we're at least open to discussing it. We both have ideas on what we want to do in the next seasons. Remember, it's going to be a short season, so we can't do anything long. Basically 2 months worth. And that is coming up soon. So if you have anything that you're like, I really wish you guys would cover this, please let us know in the next couple of weeks. And we will consider it for Season 5.
So that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for episode 303 of Better Podcasting. I'm Steven saying it is August now. I can't believe it's August now.
And I'm SP saying as we record this, the Olympics are going on. My good luck to all the participants is extended. So hope you guys are having fun competing, and we'll see everybody next time.
Out.
Bye. Should I play it? Should I play it just so that we can cap it off on the live? Or no?
Nah.
Okay.
Nah.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, my bad for going long.
No, it's fine.
I heard it. No, I heard it. My bad.
Okay, thanks everybody. Definitely. Damien, Red Circle was up there for us for sure, but they're just a bit too expensive. And so credit where credit's due. Give Pinecast a shot there because they were up there. But as we said, definitely it is a for now. Because with those glitches and stuff, we're both of the mindset that it could be a temporary home with Pinecast. we're giving it a shot. We're giving it a shot, and that's why we made sure to say for now. And hopefully, because we're going there, and we like what we see there. I'll say for my part, I hope we stay there for a long period, just because I think it is an option there for a lot of podcasters who want to save a buck, but want to have some features.
Yeah, it was a good opportunity to go over the RSS feeds for me, which is still ongoing, actually. I have successfully ported over all my podcasts except for Better Podcasting. And now that they're over, I have got to go through and make sure all the descriptions are good and all the metadata is good and that sort of thing. I've concentrated on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., which actually I need to continue, because I need to standardize the episode descriptions and stuff like that, just to make sure that they're all okay there. There was some back end that I had to do with Pinecast of like the seasons and the episodes stuff, some formatting stuff on the settings to make it more like just a normal show. So wherever you go, you're going to end up doing that. You're going to end up, customizing your show and the settings.
Yeah.
It just takes a while. And as I have everybody on the line, let me look here as to my account. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have imported 11 podcasts over, 10, because 9. 2 were on Pinecast. I've imported 9 podcasts, or have access to podcasts that have been imported over to Pinecast.
We ended up also,
right now.
Yeah, we ended up paying for the whatever the one is that allows you to
the crew
pass, or crew pass. I don't know, kids play Fortnite, can you tell? Anyways, we ended up paying for the crew membership, each of us respectively, so that we could share those. In theory, we both didn't need to, because if we didn't, like, in theory, SP could have just paid for it, and I could have transferred my Pinecast things over to him for him to share back. But we just did that, and then which I guess would be the case with anything that you can share. I could theoretically have done that, but yeah, I did a test with Better Podcasting. We both have seen there's going to be a bit of cleanup needed for that. Nowhere near, as far as we've seen, Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. level, which is nice.
That was horrendous.
But it is a good opportunity. Plus, there's only 303 episodes, so I know that sounds still like a lot, but like 303 is way different than 500. Like, you think about it, you're pushing double the amount. So yeah.
One of the episodes that I'll just, for the live audience here, I'll let this go. One of the episodes that we're going to do next season will be show notes, best practices.
Yeah.
And by show notes, I'm talking about the description of your episode. It's different. It's not a blog post. It's just a description. And with how episodes are disseminated these days, it's definitely a different sort of thing to look at than originally 10 years ago. I was looking at it as a no kidding blog post. And even with Libsyn, so you could upload different files in MP3, like you could upload a PDF into your RSS feed, and you cannot do that with a lot of the other stuff out there, which is fine. I think RSS feeds have evolved to the point where it's just going to be your show. It is not a way to disseminate files. Like if you had some sort of a download that you were referring to on your podcast, or some sort of like game that you made, or tickets or something like that, you could, in the old Libsyn feed, you can disseminate that through the RSS feed. Your podcatcher might not catch it, but it would be in the RSS feed. That did not translate over to Pinecast, and it wouldn't have translated over to other places as well. But it's just an example of the different things that I was dealing with the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. feed, that I had to make sure that I saved it somewhere if I wanted to keep it. Otherwise, as soon as I turned off the Libsyn account, I would just turn it off. I will also say that as I ported stuff over, I have dropped every single show on Libsyn down to the $5 a month plan, because I'm not uploading anymore. And we didn't talk about it, but one of the things that you should probably do is download your stats before you get rid
Oh,
of
yeah.
your account.
Yeah. All right.
maybe that's-
Well, we're getting quite
know.
late here, everybody. So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate that. And yeah, we'll have an episode of Gonna Geek Show for those of you who are interested on Monday, unless something changes.
Oh, yeah, that'll be fun. Talk
and
a little bit about Starliner, I'm sure.
yeah, I'm sure. And hey, in the meantime, make sure you check out Johnny Pennington's text cast. I heard that he's going to hang around our Discord and do a podcast by text. That's what I heard.
I think you should go to 11 Labs and convert the text into a voice.
Oh, really? Friday? Is it a long weekend for you guys down there this week?
No.
No. Okay, it is up here.
Yep.
Okay, that's slightly more acceptable. Friday that late.
Are you off Monday or today?
Monday.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
Is it the Canadian Olympic holiday?
No, it's I think it's actually a bunch of different days. I think they differ from province to province. Yeah, if that's this one. Pretty sure it is. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. Well, that'll give you some extra time to fly to Nova Scotia and grab that new truck.
Jeez. Because of my because of my newfound ability to have my wife home tomorrow, which I'm going to leave it at that. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
I'm going to be I'm taking the opportunity to go out of town tomorrow and do a little truck shopping. So looking.
Okay.
So anyways, bye everybody.
Bye.